session. Those who are outside, standing outside, may please come to the hall. We'll start the program, afternoon program, with the endowment lectures. I would like to invite the honorable speakers for the endowment lectures. May I invite Professor Sachchidanand Mishra ji to come to the dais. Then I also request Professor Rajat Bhattacharya ji to come to the dais. May I also request my good friend Professor Ambika Datta Sharma to come to the dais. And also I invite Professor Uma Shankar ji to the dais. If the General President is here, I would like to request him to come to the dais. Professor L.P. Singh sir.
We have to present this book to 3 speakers.
What is this book?
This is like Bharatiya Gyan Parampara.
That somebody will do that. Huh? Okay.
Yes.
Now because I'll go down now after.
Okay. So I'll
Jain ji. Jain.
You will be here only.
No. I am going down. Who is coordinating for this program? Okay, you are there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You have to call one by one.
Yeah, but you have
No, I need not be here because the General President will come here. Professor Rajat Bhattacharya. Yeah. I just now called you.
Hello.
Please.
Hello.
Yeah. Friends.
PowerPoint nahi hai na? PowerPoint present
PowerPoint, I don't know.
Okay,
Not. Dear friends, now the first endowment lecture is Professor T.R.V. Murti endowment lecture on Madhyamika philosophy, which will be delivered by Honorable Professor Sachchidanand Mishra, the Member Secretary of ICPR. Let me say a few words about this endowment lecture, because this endowment lecture was instituted just a few months ago, 6 months ago in fact. And when the donors, that is Professor T.R.V. Murti's daughters, they spoke to me and they wanted to institute an endowment lecture on their father's name, namely T.R.V. Murti. And it is very interesting to note that they have specifically mentioned that Professor Sachchidanand Mishra should deliver this lecture. Why? Because all of us know that he is a great scholar, but what T.R.V. Murti's daughters as well as Professor Vijay Kumar of BHU, they suggested that Professor Sachchidanand Mishra is the rightest person for this endowment lecture for the main reason that he is the one who translated the book of Professor T.R.V. Murti, that is Central Philosophy of Buddhism, into Hindi. That's a great honor to all of us. So, as per their request, and also on behalf of IPC, we have great pleasure in welcoming Professor Sachchidanand Mishra ji to deliver this lecture. Professor, please.
Respected Professor Paneer Selvam ji, Professor Ambika Datta Sharma ji, Professor Rajat Bhattacharya ji, and madam, and the scholars present in this hall. This is really an honor for me to deliver a lecture on T.R.V. Murti, whom I admire by heart. As a scholar of Madhyamika philosophy as well as Indian philosophy in general, and in his articles, his writings influenced me also and have shown a path to think in a direction which was not known to me earlier. Today, I am willing to deliver my talk on Murti's understanding of Madhyamika philosophy. We have a few challenges. When I translated this work, I met Professor A.K. Chatterjee sir, who had been a direct disciple of Professor T.R.V. Murti. And at that time, he told me that nowadays nobody takes Professor T.R.V. Murti seriously, because his understanding of T.R.V. Murti is not considered a proper understanding of Madhyamika philosophy. And this statement from a scholar like Professor A.K. Chatterjee made me wonder what is the truth behind it. What are the understandings of T.R.V. Murti, or what are the understandings of Madhyamika philosophy we have to discuss. This magnum opus, Central Philosophy of Buddhism, was published in 1954-1955. And after so much time, we are discussing now the understanding of Professor T.R.V. Murti's, if correct or otherwise. Why is it so? Because when this book was published and in the way this book was written, it is a very good book in the sense that it makes a very strong case about Madhyamika philosophy. In one place, Professor T.R.V. Murti tells that this philosophy is actually of an higher order. Philosophy of philosophy. This is an office of all the philosophies, where every philosophy has to appear for examination. And not only this is the case, but this philosophy is not present on the same ground all other philosophies are placed. So Professor T.R.V. Murti is placing this philosophy at the highest point. And doing so, Professor T.R.V. Murti is actually in a different way imitating Madhavacharya, Sayana Madhavacharya. We all, the students of philosophy, are very well aware of this fact that in Sarvadarshan Sangraha, Madhavacharya made a very strong statement where he argued that this Advaita philosophy is the highest philosophy. And in that book, he placed all the philosophies in one order. beginning from Charvaka and reaching at Advaita philosophy. And here we find a claim by Professor T.R.V. Murti, where he is saying that this philosophy is actually an high order of philosophy. Every philosophy is actually placed at a lower level. And this philosophy is the highest philosophy. So we can see this idea of placing philosophies in a step way, in stepping orders. This is very unique in Indian philosophical tradition. And we have so many such type of exercises available in Indian philosophical tradition, where we find Udayanacharya, Madhusudan Saraswati, Madhavacharya, and so many more scholars placing all the philosophies in a step-wise manner. So, this philosophy, when placed at a higher level, examines all the philosophies. And here comes an idea of philosophy which is completely unique. We all remember one point in Madhyamika Karika where Nagarjuna tells us, Esham cha shunyata drishti rasadhyan tan babhashire. So he is telling that this philosophy is not a kind of drishti. And this is a very unique statement, because in Sanskrit, drishti and darshan are used as synonyms. So, this statement of Nagarjuna could be understood in two ways. One point is thus that one, that he is opposing every kind of philosophy, rejecting every kind of philosophy, and promoting that there is no possibility of any philosophy at all. So, if we understand Nagarjuna's position in this way, we will have a different kind of understanding of Nagarjuna's philosophy. And another way of seeing it, that Nagarjuna also propounds that yoyam pratitya samutpadah shunyatam tam prachakshmahe. So this pratitya samutpad is actually shunyata. And how this shunyata be understood, this is a puzzle. And in order to understand the Madhyamik philosophy, we have to log this puzzle. What is this shunyata? And how this shunyata be understood? And I think in Indian philosophical tradition, Nagarjuna is the most puzzled philosopher, most misunderstood philosopher. Not only this, because when T.R.V. Murti is writing this text, Central Philosophy of Buddhism, he is rejecting the whole tradition, saying that the traditional understanding of Nagarjuna philosophy is wrong. When we consult Acharya Shankara's Bhashya or Vigrahabhyavartini, in response of Vigrahabhyavartini, when we consult Vartik Nyaya Bhashya, Tatparya Tika, etc., the Nyaya tradition, everywhere we find that this philosophy is considered a kind of Asadvadin philosophy, nihilist philosophy. So, he has this point to make, Professor Murti, that this philosophy is not a nihilist philosophy, as it is understood by the traditional scholars. And doing so, he finds so many scholars in front of him, like Acharya Shankara, like Udayanacharya, Vachaspati Mishra, and so on. So his claim is so bigger. because he is making a new path, discovering, representing, interpreting this Madhyamika philosophy in a new light, in a new way. And doing so, he took some inspiration from the development of Western philosophical tradition, where he places Nagarjuna's philosophy as incomplete work of Immanuel Kant. And according to T.R.V. Murti, Nagarjuna's philosophy could begin from the place where Kant left his philosophy. So, philosophy which is propounded by Kant is actually unfinished philosophy. And this unfinished philosophy could be developed in the form of Nagarjuna's philosophy. Whether this understanding is correct or not, this is very much debatable, because Immanuel Kant comes very late. In front of Nagarjuna there was no Immanuel Kant. So this type of understanding of Nagarjuna leaves many rooms for doubt. Therefore, when we take the understanding of T.R.V. Murti of this Madhyamika philosophy, we have to see how he is representing this Madhyamik philosophy. Because I translated this term, and sometimes it appears that the translating a work is not a very difficult task, because you can do it mechanically. And with the invention of Google Translation, many people see that this can be done mechanically and there is no need of a human being who can translate a text. But sure enough, the students of philosophy are very well aware of this fact, that translating a philosophical text is much more difficult. And sure enough, I could have completed my own work instead of translating this work. So doing so, I discovered, because when you are translating, you don't study the text only one time. Rather, you have to study the text so many times to grasp the essence of the text. Because when you read, many times reading once you left the book aside, and whatever you grasped, you believe that you grasped very well. But when you are translating, you have every time you have a doubt. You doubt yourself, your capabilities, whether you have understood the text completely or not in a right way, because there are possibilities of misrepresentation. So, where T.R.V. Murti begins this text, and the beginning of this magnum opus is actually the silence of Buddha. And here again there is a point, why to accept this Madhyamika philosophy as the central philosophy of Buddhism. Because this claim could be made by others also. And here, when Buddha propounded his philosophy, he named it as Madhyama Marga. And all the philosophers who follow the Buddhist path, they claim that their philosophy is a kind of Madhyama Marga. And when you are talking about central philosophy could be very much related to Madhyama Marga, as Madhyam comes in between and center comes also in between. So, this Madhyamika philosophy of Nagarjuna is central philosophy of Buddhism. Why Vaibhashik philosophy is not central philosophy of Buddhism? Why Sautrantik philosophy and why Yogachara philosophy is not central philosophy of Buddhism? However, there could be claims. And the claims are made also. When Kalupahana wrote Central Buddhist Philosophy, in this philosophy, the main contention is given on the causal theory. And the causal theory is actually essence of Vaibhashik and Sautrantik philosophy. So on that ground, these claims are made. But beginning from this text, the central philosophy of Buddhism, we observe that with his vast understanding of Buddhist literature, he knew English, he knew Chinese also, he knew French also, German also. So we are very much incapable in comparison to T.R.V. Murti, because he knew so many languages and he was very well acquainted with, also he was very much well acquainted with Sanskrit. He understood Sanskrit very well. So we are all incapable in some sense, because his understanding is actually passes so many boundaries of thought, boundaries of languages, and so on. So there are so many references from French, from German, and some others. So when he is talking about and framing this philosophy, he begins this philosophy from the silence of Buddha. And I claim that all the teachings could be understood in other philosophical schools, but silence could not be understood in other schools so beautifully as it can be understood in Madhyamik philosophy. Why? He explored the questions which are known as Abhyakrita questions, Abhyakrita prashnas. And tradition says that these are 10 questions. But T.R.V. Murti classified those 10 questions in 4. And he says that these are only 4 questions. I am reading, thereafter I go on. Is the universe is eternal or not eternal? So these are 2 questions. Is the universe is finite or infinite? So these become 4 questions. Is the body soul or not? So these are 6 questions. And the 4th question is, and actually in this question you can find the seeds of Madhyamik philosophy. The question is Tathagat existent after Nirvana, or non-existent after Nirvana, or existent and non-existent both, or neither existent and nor existent? And what Buddha did? Buddha kept silent. He didn't spoke, he didn't speak, he didn't answer these questions. And these questions are very famously said Abhyakrita prashnas. The questions which are not answered, unanswered questions. And however, all the philosophers of Buddhist tradition, whether they are Vaibhashikas or those are Sautrantikas or Yogachara or Madhyamik, all philosophers claim that they understood the essence of Buddha's teaching. And there is a clear-cut mention of Nitarth and Nayarth in Buddhist philosophical tradition. But this point where Buddha keeps mum is not answering any question, that cannot be understood in other philosophies. Rather, it can be understood in Madhyamik philosophies. Therefore, he calls this Madhyamik philosophy as the central philosophy of Buddhism, because in this philosophy all the teachings could be understood as well as the silence could also be understood, could be very well accommodated. So from this he is beginning, and you can find out the plan of Nagarjuna. When he is explaining, he is writing Madhyamaka Karika, Madhyamika Shastram. Every chapter is known as Pariksha, examination. And in this examination, he has taken the clue from here, from these Abhyakrita Prashnas, and concluded that no claim can be made. So from this actually, from these examinations, what conclusion he is arriving? He is arriving at the conclusion that no claim could be made. Any claim which is made actually false. Therefore, he is telling that all the philosophies, all the drishtis are false. So all philosophies are false, and in doing so, how you can see how difficult it would be to understand Madhyamik mind. Because usually when we try to understand, and we have discussions with many scholars of traditional scholars, some invited me to speak on the tattvas accepted in Madhyamik philosophies. And I told that there are no tattvas which are accepted in Madhyamik philosophy. So, because when we study philosophy, we are now holding this seminar, this conference in Maharashtra. And in Maharashtra, Marathi language, philosophy is known as Tattva Jnana. And there are departments which are known as Tattva Jnana Vibhaga. So now this is very difficult to understand a philosophy which is free from any tattvas, which is not propounding any tattvas. And you are also, so could you say that this is a Tattva Jnana? And in what sense it is a Tattva Jnana? The claim is made by Nagarjuna and also supported by his commentators that this is Tattva Jnana because this is called Bhuta Pratyaveksha. Bhuta Pratyaveksha, how the things are. If you know how the things are, this is called Tattva Jnana. So actually, things don't have any swabhava. They lack any nature, any swabhava. Therefore, if you are knowing it, it is actually Tattva Jnana. So in this sense, Madhyamik philosophy is a Tattva Jnana. But this is also Tattva Drishti. But when you are conceiving, and a very beautiful example is given, and this was quoted by T.R.V. Murti also, that in some place, some home, a person came to ask something, and the household lady told the person that there is nothing at home, so give me nothing. The person who came there to ask, he told that give me nothing. So this is actually the problem in understanding Madhyamik philosophy. Because when you are saying, and he very beautifully explained that actually we are preoccupied with the idea of philosophy. That philosophy actually gives an understanding of reality. And the understanding of reality, when we say that this is a philosophy which has no position. So, where there is no position at all, the philosophy is understood that this philosophy says that there is no position at all. So actually, this philosophy is not taking any position. Therefore, this philosophy is understood as Madhyamik philosophy and Nagarjuna's understanding. So negating the traditional claim, he says that this philosophy negates all the views, but doesn't form any view regarding any philosophy. But he classified this Madhyamik philosophy as a kind of absolutism, Nirapeksha Tattvavada, as I translated in the translation, Nirapeksha Tattvavada. So And he put these philosophies, Yogachara philosophy, Madhyamika philosophy, and Advaita philosophy at the same level. And these three philosophies, according to T.R.V. Murti, are kinds of absolutist philosophies. So, when this is made, he could respond to the objections which are raised by traditional scholars, but invited objections from modern scholars who said that this is actually Vedantification of Madhyamik philosophy. You are not presenting Madhyamik philosophy, rather you are making it a kind of Vedanta philosophy. But some places, T.R.V. Murti cleared these points, and he said that those who have studied the tradition, they are well equipped to understand the Madhyamik philosophy and Buddha's teaching than those modern scholars, because they are being in Madhyamik philosophy and the challenges which T.R.V. Murti was facing. And at one place he says that any kind of morality, any kind of ethics is based on an understanding of metaphysics, metaphysical understanding. If you are not understanding, if you are not having an understanding of essence, nature of the world, nature of self, there is no possibility of any kind of morality. So morality is based on epistemology as well as metaphysics, metaphysical position. So there are challenges, and these challenges T.R.V. Murti is facing, and accordingly he is presenting his views. And this is also to be understood that when T.R.V. Murti wrote this text, he devoted one chapter to reject that this philosophy of Nagarjuna is not any kind of logical positivism, because logical positivists also reject metaphysics, and this philosophy also rejects metaphysics. So if this philosophy rejects metaphysics and logical positivists also reject metaphysics, what is the point? Where they differ? And if this is so, as their philosophies are very much similar, both are rejecting metaphysics, their way of life should also be very much similar. But the fact is completely opposite to it. And here there is, he finds equation of pragya paramita. He says this pragya paramita is actually shunyata. There is no distinction between pragya paramita and shunyata, and all other paramitas are dependent upon this pragya paramita. So when he is saying that all, and he has given some references to prove his claim. So I think this understanding goes against those scholars who are of this view that this Madhyamik philosophy should be understood as a kind of pragmatism. Because in pragmatism, you don't have to make a proper claim in this way, that this pragya paramita is the basis of all your activities, all your life works. So here, basing all the paramitas on pragya paramita, he is discovering that actually this philosophy is a kind of Nirapeksha Tattvavad, absolutism. But how this absolutism could be different from Advaita absolutism and also from Vijnanavad Yogachara absolutism. And this is the big challenge. And he says, he gave a very beautiful example. If there is a circle and there is a center of that circle, so every radius has to reach at the central point. But it doesn't make all the radii identical. All the radii are different. However, they all are reaching at the central point. So, according to T.R.V. Murti, these all absolutist philosophies are different, at least as they reach at the center. So in that way we have to make, and in doing so, he has made very sincere efforts to establish how these all philosophies, and this can be seen in some writings, that how these philosophies are different on their own way. However, all these are absolutist philosophies. So here, understanding absolutist philosophy and making them different from nihilist philosophy and also pragmatism and other kinds of philosophies. I think when we evaluate T.R.V. Murti's claim, we have to look into the commentaries which are available on Madhyamika Shastra. And the very beautiful commentaries available, Prasanna Pada. And I can be very much sure, because I have gone through that Prasanna Pada, that T.R.V. Murti's understanding of Madhyamika philosophy is actually based on this Prasanna Pada commentary. And if T.R.V. Murti is wrong in understanding Madhyamika philosophy, hopefully the writer of Prasanna Pada is also wrong in understanding Madhyamika philosophy. However, there are some more commentaries available on Madhyamika philosophy, and as the nature of Madhyamika philosophy is so that it invites so many confusions, therefore it leaves some room for different interpretations also. Therefore, I think it will be wrong to say that one understanding is incorrect one and another one is correct one. Rather, it would be a right way of understanding presentation of Nagarjuna's philosophy by T.R.V. Murti and by other scholars, that which philosophy is more genuine to Madhyamika Shastra, Madhyamika Karikas. And doing so, we can evaluate those claims. I think I have taken much time, so I conclude my presentation here. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for your